So we're going to do a podcast based on Doug Lemon's Teach Like a Champion 3.0. So James and I have read this, and particularly his chapter on thinking ratio through questioning, which is chapter 7. He highlights that the most important thing that a teacher can do is create a setting where concentration can be maintained by our students, and there's a habit of sustaining focus throughout. He thinks the best way that we can do this is through cold calling regularly, so that we have greater participation and a number of learners thinking is really his focus.
Cool. So me and Sadie are going to share a few ideas that we've sort of borrowed and stolen from this chapter, which is sort of page 265 onwards. Two of the key ideas that Doug refers to is this idea of think ratio and participation ratio, which obviously links into cold calling as well. So Sadie, do you want to start us off with?
Yeah, so his whole point is trying to get as many of the learners thinking as humanly possible. So previously in my practice, I would say, right, James, tell me what this is, please. Gemma, add to it. What his argument is that's really poor think ratio. So I need to pose the question to the group. So what is anime? Then wait 8 seconds with nobody calling out, and then ask the learners. And the cold calling as a general strategy socialises them into readiness, so they're constantly ready and prepped to answer. But he notes that most teachers wait a second. So they'll ask the question to the group, then they'll wait a second, and then they'll call upon somebody. But you won't get the best answers that way. Whereas he found the best practitioners pose the question to the group, no shouting out, they wait 8 seconds, so they do their and therefore then they call upon them. And he argues that means you start with the highest quality answers and you build from there. So I found that previously, as I've said, say the name, then ask the question. And since I've been really trying to embed his practice, which is ask the question, then wait the 8 seconds, the responses I get are much better. So I am starting with a much better quality and then bouncing and building from there.
And one of the things with that as well is linking to that participation ratio. So quite often if you say, Sadie, tell me the answer to this question, Sadie is the only one now in the whole class that is actually thinking, but at the same time that does put Sadie under a bit of pressure as well. So some of the sort of research looks at how we can encourage that process of sharing ideas and not just going, I don't know, ask someone else. So that idea of ask the question, wait 8 seconds, everyone's now thinking actively, thinking quite detailed about what their answer's going to be, and they're expecting, that could be them that's then cold called rather than just picking on Sadie, just want an answer there. So that links into having quite a high participation ratio, which is really important if we want everyone thinking and everyone to sort of develop an answer, or everyone to be sort of ready to extend an answer potentially as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I mirror that, because if they already know it's them, what I've realised from reading his book, if they already know it's them, then the others think, I've got a couple of seconds, and they know that I'll probably come to them anyway, but they do think they can get a moment off. Whereas actually, if they all have to be prepped and ready, it increases the participation, increases the enthusiasm. He also notes a really good point that the extra time allows learners to overcome any doubts. So one of the really nice strategy he suggests is right, can anybody in this room put your hands up if you could confidently tell me, please, what we mean by strain theory? And then you wait the 8 seconds. So I can see James is up, I can see 4 of you, 6 of you, okay, a couple of you are coming in, and then call upon them. And that doesn't mean the learners that haven't got their hands up don't get questioned. It's just you're giving them enough time. And he notes that they overcome their doubts. They think, do I know strain theory? I think it's that. She's probably going to ask me to give an example, so I think of that. It means that there's so much more participation because they're all expected to be involved and all be called upon.
I think Doug sort of refers to that as sort of narrating hands during the think time.
Yes.
So he starts to talk and go, right, we've got 2 hands up, we've got 3 hands. I'm going to wait 10 more seconds because I want as many hands as possible. So it's what he's trying to do is sort of promote the thinking, but also having that as a standard of in a lesson, you know, you get thinking time to come up with a good quality answer, so that you can't, you know, you don't have students to go, oh, Sadie took my answer.
Yeah.
You know, so in respect to getting better quality answers and maybe more sort of breadth of answers as well.
And I think it really adds to that culture of everybody's engaged. Actually, you're the odd one out if you haven't put your hands up. So that infection of involvement and enthusiasm is really, really key, really key.
And for me, because in my classroom generally I have a no hands up sort of policy or rules, but actually it's something that I've introduced where a few questions in the lesson I'll have hands up, and I want to have a good gauging of sort of how much knowledge that they can sort of show and who's confident enough to share their knowledge as well. So even though I normally cold call and there's no hands up, actually that's a really good way to gauge who does have a good answer and who's willing to share their answers as well.
Yeah, I think if you call upon people even though their hands aren't up as well, because I did that this morning in my lesson and they still know the answer, it's still creating that culture of sharing. And he notes really that cold calling is the most impactful thing that teachers can do, that questioning adds to the culture of the room, it tests learning, it stretches and challenges, and it always needs to be warm. So it should never ever be a sanction or a got you moment. So if someone's daydreaming, go, I told you should be listening, you should be listening. It's about wanting everyone involved and everyone to engage. So he really has some lovely strategies of smiling, of doing those verbal cues of nodding or of walking towards them. And I think we've kind of talked about them before, but if they genuinely don't know, that is absolutely fine. They can get some wait time, but if they don't know, we go to someone else, or you do your phone a friend, and they come back to them. But it's always a positive thing, ensuring that they're focused, but also ensuring they're involved.
And to add to that, Doug makes reference to always being really strategic with your questioning. So again, not picking on someone because they've turned up late or they staring out the window for 2 seconds. But on top of that, he does mention about avoiding random name generators, which is something which I know some teachers have probably experimented with in the past. But again, that is very, very much less strategic, and it is, anyone goes. Whereas actually, as high level practitioners, we want to maybe pick carefully as to who's going to answer this first question, or this is a more open question, so who might be able to extend this. So cold calling, as Sadie was saying, most effective opposed to these random name generators you can get online, those types of things. The second thing I wanted to add is this idea. Sadie made reference to students that don't have an answer, and that's okay in the classroom. And again, something that Doug makes reference to, and there's lots of research to support this as well, is this idea of think, pair, share, or think before sharing. This idea of actually, I'm going to give you 10 seconds of thinking time, of wait time. I like to refer to it as sort of thinking time. I know you refer to it as sort of wait time.
Yeah.
But in that time where they can discuss ideas, and then as a result they might have 2, 3, 4 ideas, might be able to build some more ideas, and that often helps with this idea of we're going to cold call, but actually everyone has participated now, everyone's discussed, so I can go to anyone in the classroom to start this discussion off, and then we can go to somebody else to sort of extend this answer, or to come up with a counter argument, or to say why they don't agree, that type of thing. So there's other studies as well which use think, pair, share as a really good way of increasing that participation ratio, but also sort of reducing that anxiety, especially with first years, especially that they've been working from home in the last couple of years. They go, I don't know, go bright red, I don't want to share anything. But if they've had that chance to discuss with a partner first, they're more likely to share or want to put their hand up to share their answers.
It's really good scaffolding as well. So I think, particularly since I've observed you and popped in on your lessons, that if I say to the group, right, remind me what this is, and I'm questioning them, and it is clear that there is a gap in their knowledge, that it's been forgotten, say, right, you have 60 seconds, turn and share, you're going to find the answer for me please, 60 seconds you're going to write on your board, and then come back. So again, it's always about establishing the gaps, and using the turn and share is a really good way to scaffold and support, particularly, like you say, for those weak learners, that weak learners at that moment, really. The other thing I think is really interesting that he suggests as well is this kind of choral response. So where you go, right, 3, 2, 1, class, and all together they tell you the answer. So he suggests with older learners like ours that it can still be really effective, but to use it occasionally, to use it almost like as a novelty thing. So if there's particular key things they need to know, like a statistic, or at the start of my lesson today they couldn't remember 2 studies, then what I do is I said to them this morning, I know this is going to feel a bit strange, and it's okay to say to them, I'm going to try this out because I've read this, but we're going to give it a go. Right, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, class, and you're all going to shout out to me that Bunstall study is on bodybuilders. So 3, 2, 1, class, and then they all shout it out together. It's just a nice way, it's a bit novelty. If you need them to remember a stat, if it's in one of your objectives or it's a key thing that comes up in the exam, it's really helpful to do it with them. He suggests using it but not overusing it. Using it as a bit of novelty is quite helpful.
I was just trying to find the page number.
Yeah.
I think it's referred to as sort of call and response, where yes, everyone answers, but like Sadie says, not always the most effective, throughout the lesson.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's something where if we want quick facts and we want everyone to know the answer, then ultimately there's nothing wrong with that. But at our sort of level, we might have some students that think, we're going back to primary school with this as well. But something to maybe experiment within lessons there. Sort of building on that, Sadie, we were talking about this beforehand in terms of the way that we sort of front load our questions as well. So with that example, you were saying, in 3 seconds, I want a choral response, or I want everyone to tell me the answer. 3, 2, 1, let's go. So again, I think it's work from Doug in here and Adam Boxer that make reference to sort of front loading the question. So whether it's you're going to turn and talk with your partner, here's the question, but putting the instruction first before your question.
Yeah.
Quite often you say a question, you get people shout out, hands go up, but actually I want you to turn and talk with your partner. So it doesn't sound like a massive difference in terms of your question, but actually front loading it with what you want them to do. On your whiteboard, you've got 20 seconds to do this, or turn and talk with your partner for this, or you've got 10 seconds to think inside your heads, and then there's your question. And again, that often makes quite a big difference in terms of the responses you get as well. I think I'll try and find a page number where they're talking about this in terms of the cues that you're going to give as well. Let me see if I can quickly find it.
Yeah, because I think that's really helpful, because when they know the question first and then they're given the wait time, it's much more impactful. It has a greater time for them all to think and to share and think about it and work through it. That's quite helpful.
So that's page 310, 311 in the book, which is quite useful. They refer to it as the means of participation. So am I going to cold call? Is this a call and response where I get the whole group to respond? Turn and talk to your partner, and then here's the question. Or you'll put pencil to paper, and then here's your question. Everybody writes. So that's quite a useful table that they've included in the book on page 310 and 311 as well.
The choral response with whiteboards is really helpful as well. So if I've got clear objectives, in terms of I need a definition of this, I need 2 clear points in this, and I need a reference to the item to get all 5 marks in this question. Those are my objectives. Then I'll do a choral whiteboard response. Right, you've got 5 seconds, I want on the whiteboard, what's this? Once you've got the answer, you can sit down. And I think I've showed it before, but it really came from Sean O'Toole, and it's he calls it a flash quiz, so I play Flash Gordon in the background really loudly, and then those objectives are met, because actually, and a similar thing to Tom Sherrington, to refer back to other research, he's like, if you wanted students to abseil down a cliff, you wouldn't check one of them knew how to abseil down a cliff. You would check every single learner in the room knew how to abseil down a cliff. So we do that by doing those choral responses by things like whiteboards or sharing in pairs, and then they all show on their whiteboards that they've clearly learned the objective, so we can move on.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the final thing or one of the final things to note as well, with the think ratio for me, it's one of these, the idea of, I don't know, at the beginning of my sort of career with teaching and questioning, it was very much, right, I'm going to wait, and it used to be like a 5-second rule all the time, so it'd be 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, but within the book they make it quite clear as to actually, if you want really detailed answers, then ultimately the think time or the wait time might need to increase, whereas sometimes where I want just a rapid answer, everyone should know this, and it's more of a closed question, or it might be more factual information, then actually the think time might only be 5 seconds, but make reference to making it predictable within your classroom, and creating the standards and the expectations of, right, now you've got 20 seconds to turn and talk with your partner because I want some good answers. So that was one of the things I sort of picked up on as well, which I think is really useful for us to be able to demonstrate in order to get some really good quality answers. So that, again, relating back to that think ratio.
It's really helpful. We've purposely tried to kind of do this as a podcast because it's an incredible book with such helpful strategies. It's so time consuming. It's literally a Bible to read through. So yeah,
500 odd pages
of good strategies, but still quite tricky. If you think of anything, particular areas of research that you maybe want us to review and come up with, let us know to either help support your triangles or just things that you're interested in. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.
Bye.